Before we jump into the episode today, I want to share something with you from my heart. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really can't tell you how much your support means to me. We've been doing the podcast now for almost 4 years. I can't even believe it. And I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you that listens, shares an episode with your friends, sends me a DM or a text message letting me know how an episode resonated with you or any aha moments. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to be able to create this podcast. It has been such a blessing in my life, and I love hearing the ways it's been able to provide value in yours as well. One thing you might not know is how much work it takes to be consistent with a podcast. In fact, did you know that the majority of podcasts don't make it past episode number 10? And we are well beyond that. And it's just a lot thinking of the episodes, recording them, editing them, managing the guests, making sure that everything runs smoothly and gets uploaded consistently and regularly. And so that's why I have created an amazing opportunity for you to support the podcast monetarily. And in exchange for that, you will get exclusive premium subscriber content. So for as little as $3 a month, you can become a premium subscriber of the podcast. And every month I will upload new voice-guided workouts and breathwork meditation audio for you. So that way you can work out with me, coaching you in your ears. You can also take a moment to reduce your stress and relax and come down and ground down with one of my breathwork audios. So if that is on your heart to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month to become a premium podcast subscriber, I can't tell you how much that means to me and the growth of this podcast. I appreciate you. If you're interested, click the link in the description, become a premium podcast subscriber, new content every month, and while supplies last, I'll send you an exclusive podcast coffee mug so you can have your self-love and sweat coffee every morning. I appreciate you. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, break down barriers, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey, have you grabbed your free Self-Love and Sweat monthly calendar yet? This calendar is so amazing. It comes right in your inbox every single month to help you have a little nugget of wisdom, a sweaty workout, a mindset activity, just a little something to help keep you focused and motivated and keep that momentum towards your goals. So every day when you get this calendar, you'll see a link that you can click that will lead to a podcast episode or a workout or something that will be very powerful and quick to read. And then you'll also see on the top left corner of every single day, there's a little checkbox in the calendar. And what that is that's for your one thing. You can choose one thing every month, or it can be the same, something that you want to implement, and make this something that you can easily implement, like daily meditation or getting a certain amount of steps or water, for example, and staying hydrated, and even taking your supplements. This can be something if you want to get more regular doing a particular habit and routine, you can choose what that checkbox means. So if you want your Self-Love and Sweat free monthly calendar delivered right to your inbox every month on the first of the month, go to lifelikeLondon.com/calendar, fill out the form really quickly, and you will have your calendar in your inbox within a few short minutes. That's lifelikeLondon, lifelikeLondon.com/calendar. Go get yours for free and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Jenn Drummond. Jenn is a mom of 7, a successful business owner, and Guinness World Record holder. As the first woman to climb the second highest summits on each of the 7 continents, she now spends her time inspiring others to create a thriving business and lasting legacy of their own. She shares her story and strategies for success through her book, Quit Proof, 7 Strategies for Life Goals and Business Success, and her Seek Your Next Summit podcast, programs, and signature talks. I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Jenn. Do you have 7 strategies for life goals because you have 7 kids, or is it just like 7 is your favorite
Everything's a 7.
number?
Yeah. So everything's a 7 in my life, right? So my world record was set from climbing 7 mountains on 7 continents. So I have 7 kids. So I'm like, we're going to turn this into 7 strategies, and 7's my thing. It's an affinity for it.
Oh my gosh. So when did you decide that you wanted to, did you always want to, do a Guinness World Record? Was that on your dream? Was that on your radar? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah. Okay. So what version of the story do you want? Do you want a 2-minute or a 5-minute or?
I want the truth.
Okay. The truth minute. So let's back up. I was in a horrific car accident in 2018. Should have taken my life and didn't. A few weeks after that accident, a friend of mine was running on a trail. It was wet out, slipped, hit a rock, died instantly, never came home. And so I was on this quest of why was I saved? Why wasn't she? What's the purpose? Blah, 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 blah. 2020 was about a year away, and I was turning 40 in 2020 to age myself. And I was like, I'm alive. I'm going to live. I'm going to climb a cool mountain to launch off this next decade. So I was training for a mountain called Ama de Blam. And everybody, it's the mountain that is the logo for Paramount Pictures. So everybody's like, yeah, that's the best mountain. It's in Nepal. It's gorgeous. It's all the things. So I'm training for Ama de Blam. And as we all know, COVID strikes us, and we all become homeschool teachers that are parents, or we get stuck in our houses, depending on wherever we are in life. And I have 7 children. So I am homeschooling at a whole different level. My son's struggling with his math homework. I'm like, listen, buddy, we do hard things. You've got this. And he looks at me and he goes, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? And I Ama de Blam, honey, not I'm a dumb blonde. Who are you telling this to? And so I said, you know what? Finish your math homework. We'll look at Everest. So we were looking at Everest. And by the end of the week, I hired a coach. I'm training for Ama de Blam and Everest. The coach gives me a book to read. He's like, I want you to read this book. It's about training. There's all these different things in it. So the book comes in, and in the front of the book, there was a foreword about a lady who got a Guinness World Record for skiing across the Alps in Europe. And I remember thinking, I could have done that. My kids learned how to read on Guinness World Record books. If I got a Guinness World Record, they would think I'm the coolest mom ever. And right now, I'm not feeling like the coolest mom ever because I'm harassing them about getting all this work done that is not really normally my job. So I'm talking to my coach, and he's like, yeah, I'll find you one. I said, okay, but listen, I'm not growing pumpkins, and I'm not speed eating hot dogs. So whatever. And we were kind of joking about it, so I let it go. But then a couple weeks later, he calls me out of the blue, and he's like, Jenn. I'm like, yeah? He's like, I have the perfect world record for you. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, what is it? He goes, I think you should climb the 7-second summits. So they've never been done by a female before. They're harder than the first 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 kids. Sounds like a jackpot. And so I said, let's try it. I've never slept in a tent overnight more than one night in a row before, but we'll see what happens. And that's how that whole quest started.
Oh my gosh. You're wonderful. 7 kids, homeschooling during COVID, and then also deciding to train for 7 summits. That's not something that most people, I think their brain can fully comprehend that somebody else can do, let alone their own self. What type of self-confidence do you believe you were born with, or the I can do it? Do you think it was the near-death experience? Did you have that before, or did it just click?
Here's what happened in the car accident experience. I realized with my friend dying a few weeks later, we don't get to choose when we leave, but we sure get to choose how we live. And so the one thing that I have control over is how I'm living. And the accident was a line in the sand. Before the accident, I was living a life of maybe more shoulds. Okay, I'm going to get these kids launched, and then I'll come back to me, or I'm going to do this and I'm going to come back to me. And then when I almost died and I looked at what my life resume would say, I was thinking, man, there's a lot more I could put on that. Like I have a lot more to offer this world than being a mother to my children. Now I'm grateful for being a mother to my children, but that's only one piece of me. There's a lot of me that I would like to experience and explore and see what shows up. And so when the 7-second summit quest came about, I thought to myself, even if I failed, it's still a pretty cool pursuit. No one's done it before. The first female, like all those things gave me permission to try something that was so far out of my realm that I knew no matter what showed up, it would be a pretty cool experience.
And you weren't afraid of that failure. I think sometimes thinking about that failure can be crippling for some people, or the outcome and the end of like, either I did it or I didn't. And it seems like you were enjoying that pursuit and saw failure as not such a big deal, or not such a, like, how do you view failure? And yeah, what about it? Have you failed? Did you fail any of them?
Oh yeah. Yes. Are you kidding me? I fail every day. But here's the thing. I think a lot of people put failure on the opposite side of the spectrum from success. And I view failure in the pursuit of success. Like you have to have failure to have success. And here's an interesting take from the mountains. I had no idea when you climbed Mount Everest that you don't just start at base camp and work your way up to the top. You actually have to acclimatize, which means you climb up to the mountaintop and to a point of failure where your body's like, you cannot take another step. There's not enough oxygen. We can't operate here. This is horrible. And so then once you hit that point, which is for the first time, maybe camp 1 or camp 2, then you go back down to base camp. And you go back down to base camp and you allow your body to acclimate. And what actually happens is your body physiologically changes and it starts to produce more red blood cells. So the next time you go to climb up Everest, you can go higher because you have more red blood cells to operate in a lower oxygenated environment. So this is a lesson in I had to go to failure to be able to come back and go further the next time. When we lift weights, there's some strategies that you go to failure so that you come back stronger and can lift a heavier weight next time. So once you start framing failure in the pursuit of success, it gives you permission to have failure and then use that knowledge and whatever has changed to carry you forth and make your goals a reality.
Yeah. And that fitness reference really resonates because that's where I started my career, was in fitness. And I would use that analogy a lot of like, we have to get to that failure point because that's how you like push the envelope. You get out just a little bit and you end up stronger because of it. How have your past failures shaped your approach to risk taking and decision making in the future? Were there points when you got to failure where you're like, I cannot do this? Or did you always face failure and think, no, I'm going to move through that?
So lucky for me, the mountains had all been summited before. So in my mind, if I had seen somebody else summit it, then I know it's available to me because somebody else did it. Maybe it wasn't a woman, maybe it wasn't whatever, but that is like, if a human has done it, it's available to me. I just have to figure out what I need to do to make that happen. And then you have to define what failure means to you. So for example, I have a story that I tell in a speech that I give that's called People Over Peaks. And when I went to climb K2 the first time, I didn't summit. And so that on that level is a failure. But the reason why I didn't summit is because I was up on the mountain about a day from when I would summit. And I got a call on the radio. And I was informed that one of my teammates passed away in an avalanche. Another was injured, and another one was stuck on the mountain until it was safer to rescue this human. I turned around to go be with my team. I didn't want to summit and have it always have the darkness of all the terrible things that happened on that expedition. I wanted the mountain's always going to be there. The team that I was with and the relationships that I built were way more important than the summit. So I had to go back to K2 and try it a second time. And when I went back the second time, I was like, okay, what did I learn this first time that I didn't know the second time? And I had found out that there had not been a Pakistani female on the top of her country's prized peak. And so then I got to sponsor a Pakistani female. And so when I climbed K2 in 2022 and summited, it was amazing. But when I saw this woman that I helped make possible for her journey up that mountain summit, I was waterworks, because now all of her people have an example of a woman that looks like them on the top of that mountain. And that's where, is that failure? Like, it was a success, and I wouldn't have been a success if I didn't have the failure the first year. And so I think a lot of it is, when we're looking at failure in such a small little envelope, we're not looking far enough down the road to see how that failure is actually a story of success. You just haven't lived through the whole line of it.
Yeah, it's like I either did or I didn't right now, but not being able to see that picture and looking at what you were able to, bring somebody else to be the first, and other people just like you saw another human, maybe somebody else is going to see her and be like, oh, she did it, so I can too.
Yes.
Are you afraid to die?
I'm afraid to die prematurely.
Yeah,
But I'm not. Yeah, I think once you've been I've had a couple near-death experiences. And once you've been in those situations, or you've had people die in fluke accidents or weird things, you just really become, we're all going to die. So why would I focus on dying? Why wouldn't I focus on living? And because I can control what I do each day, or what I'm interested in, or how I spend my time. And so that's where I'm going to focus and put my energy.
Yeah. And I ask because I'm pretty motivated by death. I just feel like, we're going to get there, and I don't want to be in a position where, like you said, I should have done this or whatever. Like, I often think about when I need that motivation or that spark or that oomph, on those hard days, like, okay, well, when you get to your deathbed, what are people going to say about that? What are you going to say? How are you going to feel? And there was like 2 instances recently where I was in a car on a way to a hike riding with a friend of mine, and a song came on, and I go, oh, that's my funeral song, because that's the song I want to play at my funeral. And then I was sitting on the couch with a friend the other day, and we were watching a movie, and it was like in a cemetery. And I was like, oh, I want to be buried in one of those pods where you're a tree and you're like the bottom of it, How do you want to be buried? And in both situations, they were both like perturbed by the fact that I had a funeral song and I knew exactly how I wanted to be buried. But I don't find it morbid. I find it more motivating to think about that and to have those conversations. But it was just interesting because, when you kind of brought it up and your near-death experience, and then you're doing these summits and people, are being, killed in avalanches or other things. And then when I had those conversations, those 2 instances where people are like, you have a funeral song? I never thought about it before. I think about it a lot, but I'm not afraid of it. I'm more motivated by it. Is that how you feel, or what do you think about that?
Well, I have a funeral song. So I think you're the only other person I've ever met that's like, I have a funeral song. So I totally get it. No, I use death as a motivation. I use deadlines as a motivation. I feel like it's the same concept. When I know I'm going on an expedition and I'm going to be away from my kids for a little bit, I'm extremely intentional with my time before I go to make sure that I get one-on-one time with each one of them, where we're spending and we're connecting. And with that intention, knowing that this deadline's coming, I feel my life is way more aligned time-wise with my values and how I want it to spend than what it would be otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And with 7 kids, do all of them react differently to what you're doing? Do any of them have some fears? Like, how do you, I don't know how old your kids are, but like, how do you meet them where they are in their brains and their mentality? Plus you're their mom. Like, how does that work? What does that look like?
Yeah. So when I went to go do Everest, it was going to be the longest time I'd ever been away from home. So I was worried about him. I went to the school and I talked to the school and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to be gone. Here's what I'm doing. Can you just offer a little bit more grace to my kids during this time frame? And the school came up with an amazing idea. They said, listen, let's do an Everest campaign. Let's have all the kids write what their goal is on a hiker in the hallway. We'll track you while you're climbing Everest, and we'll just make this a whole big event. And so then when I was gone, kids would say, hey, your mom made it to camp too, or here's what your mom's doing. Or it was this huge community following what my pursuit was. So my kids felt so loved and thought it was so cool that their mom was going to be the mom that was on top of Everest. And when I got back, some of the kids would come over after school and ask all about the trip, and they wanted to climb Everest someday. And I'm like, hey, I'm here for all of it. So let me know when that happens. So I feel really blessed.
Yeah. And what have they learned? Like, have you noticed their growth through your pursuit? I'm sure they're just like, oh, like my mom, did all that. I'm sure there's some pride. Yeah. Like, what does a young mind gain from seeing you summit?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So one of my kids was complaining about something and how it was hard and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, we're not allowed to complain. Our mom climbed Everest, which means we can climb it too. So we just have to push through. So, right? Like, and I think your kids see you doing life and they realize, guess what? I don't necessarily want to train today, or I don't want to eat healthy today, or I want to do some of these things that are hard towards my pursuit. But the pursuit is worth it. So sometimes I have to sacrifice the short-term happiness for my long-term happiness. And they see it. They see it in me. So we're living life in parallel. And that I think helps both of us. When I want to quit, I'm like, I can't quit. My kids are watching. I need to demonstrate how we push through when things get hard.
I love that. And being the example instead of saying like, you do this or take care of this or you should be this, you're actually embodying that. Oh, yeah. That's so wonderful. How old are your kids? Like, what's the age range?
Yeah. So my oldest is 16 and my youngest are 10. So I have 5 boys and then a set of twins at the bottom. And I should say, like, there was a point where one of my twin daughters was nervous about what was going on. So then I ended up taking her and a couple of the other kids climbing and did the activity that I do on the mountains just at a bigger scale so that they could feel it. I said, see, even when I'm scared, I'm on the mountain, I'm still on a rope. I'm still tied in. I still have different like safety devices to make sure I'm safe. And so then that took that concern out of her brain because she got to feel it and see it and actually do it, not just conceptually understand it. And I mean, that's our job as parents, is to listen and then to help them connect the dots so they feel strong and encouraged.
Yeah. Like, I hear you. That fear is valid, or the feelings she might be feeling are valid. Let me show you where I'm at so you can be there and touch and feel and experience with your senses. So then when she's imagining, hey, where's mom at the moment? She at least has some experience to pull from and be like, okay, yeah, I did that. I can imagine that. I feel like that would be really, like a good, safe feeling for a kid to experience.
Yeah.
What does your training look like? What does your nutrition look like? I know that you mentioned, what'd you say? I'm not growing pumpkins and stuffing hot dogs or something like that. I remember talking with Dean Carnessis one time, which is this guy who runs like these ultra marathons all over. And he would have like a pizza delivered to him and like scarf it and then keep running, 25 miles. I know that what you're doing is not a easy feat. So what did your training look like? Your nutrition, and how important was that to your success? I want to tell you about Magic Mind energy shots for focused energy and productivity. I've really been trying to find a way to keep my energy levels steady throughout the day and not need to rely so much on coffee. So I take this little shot alongside my morning cup of coffee, and I've really felt more focus and clarity and less jitters. And I've noticed feeling so much more awake and alert on my hikes, which I love because I love being out in nature and hiking and feeling good. So I've been making these Magic Mind shots part of my morning, and these shots are packed with all natural ingredients sourced from the best suppliers that Magic Mind could find. There's no sugar, they're nut-free, vegan, keto, paleo-friendly, all the things. And it has matcha for sustained non-abrasive energy, ashwagandha, which is an amazing adaptogen that helps our body better adapt to and respond to stress. There's also lion's mane and cordyceps mushrooms to support cognitive function, strengthen your immune system, and so much more. I love the flavor and the nutrient power punch it gives me. So I totally recommend you try it. You can get it at magicmind.com/sweatlove. With code Lunden20, you can also get up to 56% 10% off your first subscription or 20% off your one-time purchase. That's Lunden 20, LUNDEN 20 for 20% off at magicmind.com/sweat love. Now, this code also works if you're already a Magic Mind subscriber. You'll just get to save on your next subscription payment. So try it out. Let me know what you think. And now let's get back to the show.
Yes. So my training, because I'm a mom and work and do this training, looks different than everybody else's. And it's not ideal, but it's what works. So I will get up early, sometimes do a training session, get the kids to school. Then I'll maybe train a little bit while they're at school. I'll do other activities. If it's a busy day and someone has a soccer game, I'm the mom that's on the sideline of the soccer game watching the game, but maybe have a 12-inch step that I'm doing step-ups on with a weighted backpack on. So at least I'm getting the training in while watching them playing soccer instead of sitting on the sideline watching them play soccer. So I've always had to like look at my week, really shift training around so that it fit into everybody else's schedule and then accommodate. My kids sometimes will be like, Mom, do you have to bring your step this time? I'm like, listen, I do have to bring my step this time. I'm sorry, but I am doing big things and big things require training and dedication and all the different pieces. Nutrition wise, I'm making sure that I'm eating healthy because when you do heavy training loads, that's inflammation in your body. My body doesn't need additional inflammation from the things that I eat. So I'm trying to be conscientious of that. On my last expedition, when I went to Mount Logan, there's actually an amazing nutritionist who built custom meals for me. So they were all dehydrated and all I had to do is add water, and I had spinach and green beans and like healthy things that you never get on the mountains. And it was the best I'd ever felt.
Yeah, that inflammation is real, and paying attention to the foods that we eat. It's not just calories, I'm sure for you, where you're just like, go, go, go. It's being mindful of those calories. When you say training, like what specifically are you doing? I have this wonderful visual of you on the sidelines at the soccer game with the backpack. My niece is 5 and she was playing soccer this season. So I just have this visual of a soccer game and you stepping up. Is it weights? Is it Pilates? Is it stretching? Is it yoga? Is it everything? Like what? And yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of everything, to be honest with you, because my brain needs variety to stay entertained.
Same.
Yes. But as much of hiking vertical that I can do, the better off I am, because that's actually how I'm going to actually operate in the mountains. So I try to have my training mimic what my actual experience will be as much as possible. But when it comes to recovery or cross training, I'll do weights, I'll do Pilates, I'll do yoga, I'll do stretching sessions, and all of it. I'll do breath work. I think breath work is big on it.
Same. I love breath work.
Yes.
What does your breath work practice look like? Is it daily? Is it, multiple times a day? What specific breath work techniques do you? I'm just curious because I love it so much.
Yeah. No. So I do like some Zoom online ones actually, because I just like the energy of the group and the accountability. And then I'll do, for me, every time I hit a red light, I'll make sure that I try to do as slow a breathing as possible at the red lights, just to help calm my nervous system down. And that's a trigger to remind me or to check in with my breath. Am I breathing short? Am I giving all that anxiety up, or can I calm my system down a little bit more than what I'm doing? So I use the trigger meditation of a red light to start breathing slower. But otherwise, I'll probably do breath work once or twice a day because it just grounds me so much.
Yeah, it's grounding. It probably helps with your lung capacity and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I like that, the red light, to have that be a trigger to remind you to breathe slower. For me, I have like a bathroom trigger. Like every time I go and sit down and just am in the bathroom, I just say to myself, thank you for allowing me to utilize my strengths and strengthen my weaknesses. It started when I was living in Austria and had a pretty, intense job, working a lot of hours, a lot of roles. And it would be like my sanctuary. I would just go in there and kind of repeat that. Do you have any others besides the red light or things? I love doing that with my clients too. It's like, okay, what are you already doing, right? When you're driving, I guess, hopefully you hit that green wave, but most of the time you're gonna hit a red light. And those are moments where we can just kind of like stack it together, where it's like red light means breathe slower. Are there any other trigger habits that you have implemented that you're like, that totally works for me?
Yeah. So I have, you know how we have alarms on our phones?
Totally.
I've labeled my alarms. So I'll have an alarm go off in the afternoon at 3 p.m. every day when the kids are in school, and it says Magnificent Mom. And when that alarm goes off, it reminds me to step into the avatar of Magnificent Mom. And so then if I'm doing things that a magnificent mom wouldn't be doing per my definition, it helps me like just check in and shut that world down and step into this world that I need to do for the next few hours because this is the time my kids need me. So I really find setting alarms, or if I'm going to work out, I actually set a bedtime. I'm less worried about my morning routine. I'm more worried about my night routine. So at 10 o'clock, it says serious sleeper, and it's an alarm that goes off to remind me like, stop scrolling, stop doing whatever you're doing, get to bed, because anything after this is borrowing the next day. And I don't want to take debt from my next day.
Yeah, I love that. And the power of our phones, right? The alarms, we're already connected to it all the time. What is the avatar of Magnificent Mom? What is that for you? What is she doing?
Yeah.
What does she do? What are you doing?
Yeah. So she's patient. I think it's the number one thing. She's eluding love. So anytime my kids come home from school, it can be a little hectic because there's so much energy that they have to dissipate from just the day. And I remind myself that this is the meditation. Like when my kids trigger me or there's things going on, I don't need to be in a meditative state to do meditation. The meditation is living life every day. So when I see them struggling or whatever, the meditation is, how do I alleviate that? Or how do I help them recognize like, oh, wow, your body seems to be telling me that it's having a hard time calming down right now. Do you want to go? What do you think would help? Do you want to go take a walk? Do you want a glass of water? Do you want to get up and then come back to this project or whatever else? But it's very much going into an awareness state, a loving state, and a state of patience.
Awareness, loving, and patient. Yeah, that sounds magnificent. That's cool that you know that. And I think it's important that we do know that. And we know whether it's Magnificent Mom or whatever it might be, to know like, what specifically am I doing when I'm being that? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I want to be this or I want to be that. And we can get so like, chunked up in the idea, but it's so important to be like, okay, what specifically does that look like? And how do I need to, yeah, like you said, maybe switch off one mode and switch into another. Does the alarm always work for you? Like where you're like magnet and you're able to make that switch? Do you feel like it's in your programming enough where it comes on? I love this. And I feel like it comes with practice too, right? Of like honoring the alarm, right?
Yes. Yes. Everything's a practice. And if I'm finishing something up, then I hit snooze. Right. I don't like, there's a number of times that I can hit, okay, turn it off. We're ready to go. Game over. Next game. Come on. But if there's a thing that I'm finishing up this project, I'm allowed to hit snooze once. That gives me about 9 more minutes or something like that to finish what I'm doing and then transition over. And then if I don't transition over, I'm not living the avatar that I said I would. And if I can't live the avatar that I said I would, then I start losing trust and confidence in who I am. And that I can't compromise.
Yeah. Yeah. When we don't do what we said we're going to do, we lose the trust in our own selves and end up becoming kind of I don't want to say our enemy, but just kind of our own biggest hindrance to what we said we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's really powerful. I want to talk about your book a little bit, the 7 strategies for life goals and business success. We don't have to go through all 7, of course, because I want everyone to grab your book and read it. But what are maybe 1 or 2 of the strategies that you cover in that book that you could share with us today?
Yeah. So I'd say one of the big ones is committing to the commitment. So you are the only person that has your experiences and your viewpoint and your calling. And so you have to be the strongest in that commitment because nobody else can be stronger than you. And so understanding that they're going to get their strength from your strength. And I think that's a really big thing for people to step into. When I was on a mountain one year, we didn't summit, and I had delegated some of the roles that I should have held on to myself so that everybody knew, hey, here's what our goal is. Here's how serious we are. Here's how it's going to happen. And if you don't communicate that to everybody, then not everybody might be at the same commitment level you are. And they're probably always going to be a level below you because it's not their record that they're trying to set. But you have to be so steadfast in your commitment that they can borrow courage and strength from you to help carry you forth in your goal. I think that's a big one. And the other big one is people over peaks. And I'll share a story from the book of when I went to go climb Everest. I had realized I was worried. I had never been on a mountain that big. It's Everest. And I had just not a ton of mountaineering experience when I stepped into the goal. And I remember thinking, if my hair gets wet, it's going to take days for it to dry and I'm going to get sick. Okay. And I don't want to get sick. So I called a company. I said, hey, listen, I'm looking to climb Everest. I was wondering if I needed to bring a hair dryer to dry my hair. Like, could you accommodate? And the first company I called said, we don't even know what you're talking about. Like, absolutely no. Like, we're not doing this. I said, okay, fine. Bye. So I called the second company and they said, yes, you can borrow the hair dryer like once a week. We'll let you use the generator and that should be fine. I said, okay. And then I called the third company and the third company said, do you want a mirror? And I'm like, yes, I do want a mirror. Like, thank you. Right. Like, I don't even have to like feel shameful for what I'm not asking for shrimp. I'm asking for a hair dryer so that I don't get sick and can like move up this mountain. So I actually had a company in town donate a solar powered battery, which at the time I thought, I wasn't thinking. I was like, okay, I'll bring the solar powered battery and like dry my hair. And then I realized, oh, the solar powered battery has to be out in the sun. So now I have to like hair dry my hair out in front of everybody and try to like, instead of being secret in my tent. And at first I was embarrassed, but then I realized after a few women came up to me and they said, hey, Jen, thank you for drying your hair and at Everspace Camp and giving us permission to be women in this male dominated industry and not apologize for the things that we need that will allow us to succeed in whatever pursuit we're doing. And that was this huge lesson of, listen, ask for what you need. If it's an authentic need that you perceive, maybe it's somebody else's need as well. And by you having the courage to ask for it, you're giving other people permission to have courage to ask for what they need. And that's super important for all of us. And that was just a big lesson that I like run in my head all the time, the hairdryer story.
Yeah. And it's a freaking hair dryer. And it's so cool to see that the hair dryer. I worked with a client once where there was a situation with a cat, right? And the cat made such a big difference. And we were just like, it's a freaking cat. It's a hair dryer. But knowing that, hey, we can ask for what we might need. We can, stand firm in what we know is going to be helpful for us. And then other people can see it. And that's like their unofficial permission slip to be like, oh, I want a hair dryer too. Like that's super, super cool. But the one thing I do know just from talking with women and just working with women too, is that we oftentimes are, afraid to, or don't say, hey, I need this. We're more like, hey, what do you need? And others oriented with our kids and others. And I know you're working with clients and stuff too. How do you help others be able to like ask for what they need? I mean, you asked 3 times and finally that third time was a charm. You got the hair dryer, you got the mirror. Like, what would be your advice for somebody listening who maybe struggles to ask for what they might need?
Yeah. I would say for me, it helped to have children because I would always pretend if I was my daughter, Jana, or my daughter, Julia, I would want them to have the courage to ask. And I would always pretend that I'm asking for the benefit of them, even though it's me who's asking. And so then when you are struggling with asking for something that you want, think of somebody that you love or you care about, and you really hope that they have the courage to do it. You borrow that feeling of care and concern for them and you apply it to yourself, and then you ask. And you'd be amazed at how many times you receive.
Yeah, you just put yourself in your child's shoes and ask as if you are them. Because I think a lot of parents, and mothers listening can resonate with, the love and, adoration and everything for their kids, to be like, okay, if that was my kid, how would they ask, and kind of embody their courage just a little bit. That's wonderful. In your bio, I read to create a thriving business and lasting legacy of their own. And when it comes to that lasting legacy, I mean, you're so eloquent with words. I know you're a speaker and have a podcast and all those things, but like, what is that lasting legacy that you are leaving?
Right. So I'll give an example. I was climbing Mount Tyree in Antarctica. It had only been summited one time before by a female who was a guide. So I was the first American female, second female ever. And I remember standing on the side of the mountain thinking, if I would have been born when my mom or my grandma were, I would have never been in this spot like this. Like, I'm so grateful that I was born at the time that I was born, and I had the courage to step into something that was crazy. And so I knew, like, I was carrying our flag up to the top of that mountain. And that is just a sign. Like, here's where we are now, everybody in the world. Here's the flag. Where are you going to take it next? Because everything we do impacts every generation rippled wise. And so wherever you are in the world, whatever little corner that you can make a difference, the tiniest little thing elevates all of us. And it's just so important to remember that the things we do are leaving legacy, either expanding what's possible or shrinking what's possible. And it's very important for us to tune into that because we're all connected.
That's wonderful. Yeah. To look back and think, I often think about that too. And my mother and grandmother, and even my great grandmother, who I was fortunate enough to know. And I think she passed away when I was like 14, 15. She came, from a different country, didn't, and I'm thinking, if it wasn't for that move, and I do look back at that lineage with so much gratitude. And I have a picture of her framed. And I just think about that a lot, where it's like, I like what you said about passing the flag. I didn't think of that before, but that visual really resonates. And so, thank you for that. I so appreciate you and your time today and your lasting legacy that you're bringing to this world. I feel so like my whole, I don't know if this happened before, but I feel like I have this goosebump electric energy down my leg. So after we get off this, I'm going to need to jump around and go outside and move a little bit, because I just feel some type of way. So thank you. That's a gift. Yeah. Let everybody know how they can connect with you, how they can learn more about you. I'll of course list your books and podcasts and things in the description, but how can we get more from Jenn Drummond?
Yes. So please go to my website. So it's JENN Drummond, DRUMMOND, because that's kind of the home base. And you can find whatever social channel you prefer or different things that are going on in my world over there. I'd love to share.
Perfect. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for listening. Check out jenndrummond.com. I'll put everything in the description. Pick up her books, stay connected, and we'll see you at the next episode. Thank you, Jenn.
Hey, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a review. This really helps a lot. And share this with a friend. I'm only one person, and with your help, we can really spread the message of self-love and sweat and change more lives all around the world. I'm Lunden Souza, reminding you that you deserve a life full of passion, presence, and purpose, fueled by self-love and sweat. This podcast is a Hit Spot Austria production.